So we made sure that the space was for you to first come seek support and to find a solidarity network, and then also how are you escalating your own leadership and helping and supporting people.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Socially Democratic, your weekly center-left politics and organizing podcast out every Friday that dives into the progressive campaigns, issues of the day, and the people leading from home and abroad. Today's episode is a part of a special collaboration between Socially Democratic Podcast and the Leading Change Network. It's a 4-series episode released each Friday in July 2024. Leading Change Network is a global community of organizing practice and learning, working to build people power for a more just, sustainable, and democratic world. We use an evolving framework developed by Marshall Gantz at the Harvard Kennedy School and his associates. Through our programs, we work to connect ideas, build learning spaces, and develop relationships towards organized people power. We coach and support leaders, campaigns, and organizations. We offer learning opportunities to develop leadership and build trainers and coaches. We create spaces where our global community can actively learn from and support each other through online sessions and member-led groups. We create and document resources for pedagogical development. We are organizing practitioners, educators, and organizations from 75 countries, and we invite you to join our community as organizations or individuals. Individual membership is $100 a year, and you can access all of our learning opportunities and resources and be part of a vibrant global community. Please visit leadingchangenetwork.org to become a member or contact info@leadingchangenetwork.org for more information today. In this series of podcasts, we are going to highlight campaigns from around the world that use the community organizing framework. After the opening episode with Marshall Gantz, each following episode will focus on each of the 5 leadership practices: public narrative, relationship building, team building, strategy, and action. We hope these episodes inspire you to further explore and practice organizing.
We are taping this one on a Thursday evening on the lands of the Wurundjeri people here in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. And today's a special episode. It's sort of a series of episodes that we are doing in conjunction with the Leading Change Network. We're going to showcase a campaign from a community organisation in India called Haiyya, and their campaign that they successfully ran in 2018 called Health Over Stigma. And joining me on the line from Mumbai in India is to unpack this campaign is one of the community organisers that led this incredibly successful campaign, and I can hear her dying in the background, is my good friend Sreejani. Welcome to Socially Democratic.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me with you. I'm
It's
really
wonderful.
excited to be here.
It's wonderful to have you on the show, and I'm from a personal perspective, I'm rapt that you're on the show because I think that you and I first met each other when we did the Leadership Organising and Action course with Marshall a long time ago, and if he had said to us that maybe a couple of years later we'd be doing a podcast together, I wouldn't have imagined that.
Oh my God, yes, me too.
And the first time I saw you, obviously, we're in the same class, we're in the same sort of shoot together. But the first time I saw you was when we did public narrative, and Marshall called you out of the crowd, out of the class, to do some upfront coaching on your story of self, which for me would have been absolutely intimidating. And I just would love to get a penny for your thoughts about what was going through your mind when that happened.
Well, it was intimidating for me as well. And but I'm so glad you remember that, Stephen. So so I was called on by Marshall, and for a moment I was lost. Like, I had things prepped in my mind, but then I was like, okay, no, I have to stick to this. But then whatever I prepared, I forgot everything. And at that time, it was so organic. Everything that I said was just right at the moment. I'm glad in one way that everything was organic and at the moment. But yeah, like you said, I was very much intimidated, and the whole time, as excited as I was going on thinking that, oh my God, am I saying it correct? Oh my God, is it coming across all right? So yeah, a lot of things were going on in my mind that time.
It was incredibly both brave, courageous, and inspirational as well, because you did such a great job. And I thought, oh man, We've got some really smart people on this course. I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold my own. So it's great to have you on the show today. We also did, of course, train the trainer course as well together. So we've been
Yeah,
hanging out with
yeah.
each other a lot lately. So without sounding like Marshall, of course, we're going to talk about this campaign that you guys ran
Hmm.
in India,
Hmm.
which was incredibly powerful. But before we do that, and without wanting to sound like Marshall, how the hell did you end up in that room with the
Yeah.
LOA course? Like, what led you into this work of community organizing?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I never thought myself to be an organizer or a campaigner, but I always knew that, okay, there is something that is wrong and I really have to do something about it. So I grew up in this really small town in North Bengal in India, and also like in a very patriarchal setting, like patriarchal familial setting, and also, like the school I went to and my peer group and everything. So I did not have the language back then, but I could always, like identify that, okay, something discriminatory happening, like some problems, some challenges, but I couldn't stand up to it. Like, and also there was a lot of bullying that happened in my school. And later on, I mean, now that I look back, I understand that it was like a very subtle class based discrimination that was going on in my school. And like, I remember, like the popular kids hailing from upper middle class or high class. They always formed this group and they were always the teacher's favorites and everything. And I was this like really unpopular kid at school and also got bullied a lot. And that time I was like, oh, it was my problem. Like, okay, I am a misfit. I do not understand. I can never be, like, I can never, I mean, be a part of that popular group and all. Not that I want to now, but back then there
Oh
was
yeah,
this urge. And then now, cut to like when I started, then I thought that no, like I really need to work on my education, like on my I really need to score more because that was the only way that I could, like become this popular person. And I did not know of anything else. And like that is very mainstream, but mainstream was what in my head right then.
mm,
And then through education and, like through getting into university, meeting a lot of people, understanding the diverse language, I realized that no, I do not have to be that popular kid. I mean, it's absolutely okay, and that is how I ended up in Haiyya, which is a youth feminist organization. And I joined the campaign Health Over Stigma. I did not know anything back then. Like I did not have any idea. And then my mentors, they told me that, okay, Sreejani, you have to lead the campaign now. I was like, what? I've always thought that, oh my God, I am always a follower. I am not a leader. But in that moment, like as underconfident as I was, there was this urge, curiosity, and also this I don't know how to articulate it, but this excitement that, oh my God, someone has so much trust in me that I could actually take up that leadership position. And then I was like, okay, I'm not going to say no, I'm not going to step back. And then I was like, okay, I am going to be this organizer someday. And I think, yeah, that is how my journey started. And right after 6 7 months of leading the campaign, I ended up in that room of LOA where I met you and where Marshall picked me for the narrative conversation. Yeah, so that was it.
what do you think within your own origin story to that path led you to that path where you found yourself putting your hand up and saying, "I want to go work on this campaign for youth feminism and health over stigma." What happened in your origin story that made that connection? You said, "This is where I want to spend my energies and and uh, and 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 skill and focus to create change."
Yeah, that's a good question because I was also thinking about it. And like while growing up, I would never stand up for myself. I would never, like say a no, because I was like, I am not the person to say no. Like I'm not the person to, like stand up for myself. And even if I did, people would just laugh at me because I was that shy, timid, bullied child in school, and no one would listen to me. And I remember this particular incident that happened where, so I have a twin sister, and I remember we both were, like sitting in the porch of our school. And as usual, there were some people who were bullying my sister. Sorry, I should give a trigger warning because I am using this word a lot and also talking about this a lot. So, and then I don't know what happened. I was in class 8, if I remember correctly. I just, like stood up for the first time and I did not know from where did I gather so much courage and confidence. And I just stood up and I was like, no, you cannot do this with me and my sister because this is how we are and it's all right to be different. Or maybe the different was like the definition of different was very different back then. And then I was like, okay, it's all right. And you cannot do that. And those, I mean, my classmates, they were shocked. They were like, how, like a timid girl like her actually stood up and said something like that, and I think that moment really played a very important role in my life where it was not that right after that I became very courageous and everything, but then it did create an impact and I realized that no, it's very important to, like claim your voice when no one else is doing it for you. And then I always look back to that moment. It was such a like a 5-minute thing that happened in class 8. But yeah, like I was what, like 13, 14. But then no, I think that changed a lot and that told me that no, I have to claim my voice. I have to do something. I have to speak up. So I think, yeah.
So you in that moment you helped your own sister, but then years later you find yourself helping sisters from all walks of life across India.
Exactly. No, you put it so beautifully, Stephen. Exactly, right? Like that is what I thought that, and it's not just me alone. And there are so many people out there who do not have the privilege of identifying their agency of claiming their voice. So it's very important to, like create that solidarity network. So
Mm.
yeah,
Let's
that's
talk. Let's talk about this campaign because it is a fascinating campaign. And for our listeners at home, we're going to unpack the campaign in a deliberate and intentional way, which sort of follows the work of strategizing that both Sreejani and I have had the fortune of being coached on. And it begins with asking about who the constituency was. Who were the people that you were seeking to organise, and what was the problem that they were facing?
yeah. So like there was a lot of history and everything, but then just to answer very briefly, the constituency, the people of the campaign were unmarried women, young unmarried women, like all adult unmarried women, mainly from New Delhi and NCR. And we were trying to organize young unmarried women to basically fight against the stigma around sexual and reproductive health rights of women. So that was it. And let me just give a very quick background and context of it. So basically, like in India, and I'm sure elsewhere as well, but then I'm just talking from the perspective of being an Indian, like sex is a taboo, right? And marriage is like a license that grants you to, like have sex. Not that marriage is a very, like a great platform to exercise your choice and to have your body autonomy, but then also like it does give, like some amount of privilege to people, mostly to men, not to women a lot. But then for unmarried women, like the community remains invisibilized. And then to, like also talk about your body, your sexual health, or to also, like go to a doctor or a gynecologist, it's a stigma. And then there have been like so much negative consequences, health consequences, both emotional and physical. Then we thought that no, we have to do something about it. And so the campaign started. So yeah.
And what were the experiences that you can talk about that some women were facing, and what age groups are we talking about here? That the challenge that they were facing in terms of these cultural norms that existed in
Yeah.
India. Or
So, like it was mainly like, of course, we were working with adult women because adolescents have their different and separate sets of issues, and we did not want to, like homogenize all issues. So, the age group was 18 plus till, like 35, 40. Like basically, like what young, the definition of young tells us. And in terms of experience, let me tell you something. So, the campaign, it started with just one story. Like it started because like one of her colleagues, she shared her own story of, like facing stigma because she wanted to go for an abortion. And when she went to the doctor told her that, oh my God, I can't do anything about it because you're killing a life and you are not responsible, and you are, like having fun. So basically, according to the doctor, having sex and claiming authority over having sex was basically having fun in a bad way. And so I cannot clean your dirt. So imagine the pressure and the trauma that this woman was already going through, and then she was also not getting any medical support. So she comes back, and then she talks about it and shares it with, like other women around her. And you won't believe, most of us had similar stories to share, not in terms of abortion, but, like other stories. Like also when women started menstruating, they did not have any idea. Like, let me tell you, like when I started menstruating, I thought that, oh my God, I did something really wrong. And that is why, like I have blood. And I kept it hidden for at least a day, because I thought that, oh my God, something is wrong with me and my mom is going to scold me for that. So, like the stigma is so deeply rooted and it is so internalized that it becomes, I mean, it's a horror for so many women. And then when these women started talking, then they will realize that no, this is like a very serious issue. Like we are being denied of our medical rights because of this stigma, because of this age old tradition. So these are some of the experiences that, I mean, this was basically in the initial years, and then we heard like many hundreds and thousands of stories of women who talked about it.
And I was going to ask you a question in a moment about the leadership and those that you found from the constituency, the people who are prepared to stand together to fight against this stigma. But
Mhm.
before we do that, why hadn't the problem been solved? What were the barriers that you guys found when you
Yeah,
began this campaign?
yeah. uh, like a lot of things. Firstly, this shame and stigma, this age old belief that marriage is the only platform that will, like, where you can have sex, also with limitations and other things. That is, it was a very deeply rooted cultural belief system. The other thing was, like this whole power dynamic that happened. Like unmarried women as a community, like I also focused before, like a very invisible community, right? Like nobody was thinking about this group because, okay, we don't have anything to contribute because we are not married, we are not producing children, and also we are not adolescents who would grow up to, like get married and produce children. So this community was very, very, like invisible. The other thing was the service producers, sorry, the service providers. I mean, the doctors, the gynecologists, and also the paramedicals. They are, like they occupy this certain authoritative position, who are also products of this same internalized cultural belief of shame and stigma. And they were like, no, this is a soft issue and we do not want to talk about it, because they were like, there are so many other issues, like there are, like tumors, there are cancers, there are other things. Why we don't have to talk about the sexual health of unmarried women? And I remember when we went to doctors, they were like, but then unmarried women don't come to our clinics. I mean, if they have a problem, they will come to our clinics. So we asked them that, do you know, or do you ask yourself why don't they come to your clinics? Because they are so damn scared that they can't even, like, I mean, they can't even have this conversation with themselves or people around them. So to be able to go to a gynecologist, it's a very big deal. So the problem is not getting solved because of these factors.
So when you started to work out what the problem was and why it wasn't solved, what would it take to solve the problem? And in the end, what did you and the Haiyya campaign determine as your strategic goal that you wanted to work towards?
Yeah. So we realized that, uh, so when we went to the doctors and doctors said that, okay, patients are not coming and they are also not sharing, we realized that the stigma is not just from the doctors or from people who have power, but also from, like women who are not able to come to terms with their own body, with their own, like rights around their sexual and reproductive health. And then we realized that it's very important to, like claim power as a group or a community of unmarried women ourselves. And in order to solve this issue, also to challenge and question it, it was important to collectivize. it was important to build this relational power among women from across, identities, culture, and backgrounds, so that we can start sharing our stories, our stigma stories. And we realized that these stigma stories had a lot of, validity and legitimacy, because it would give us that legitimacy and the feeling that, okay, no, this is real, this is not soft, this is something that is happening with most unmarried women. And it's important to, actually get make ourselves heard. So the first part was to basically, the first strategy, so the campaign was in different phases, right? So there were two phases of the campaign, and the first phase of the campaign, the strategic goal was to, build relational power with women and form a very strong narrative of this stigma, so that legitimacy is built and women also find support system in each other. And in the second phase of the campaign, the strategic goal was to, make ourselves heard, because it's good to have these stories, but if we do not, use these stories to, hold the service providers accountable, nothing will be changed. So then the next strategic goal was to build pressure on the service providers in a way where they will, start providing non-judgmental services to women. So
Talk
yeah.
to me about the leadership, particularly that first phase where you were trying to build that relational power. Who were the leaders that stepped up out of this community? Because I get a sense that they may have been quite disparate if they hadn't been talking to each other and realizing that they were going through the same
Yeah.
experiences. How did you connect these people, and how did you identify the leadership and what role did they play in this campaign?
Yeah. So the campaign was started by Haiyya, but then we always, wanted the community to take up the leadership, and not like someone from Haiyya is taking up the leadership. So basically, young unmarried women from diverse backgrounds in the city of Delhi were taking up leadership for this. And because, like you said very rightly, like these women were not talking to themselves, and like the issue was very, maybe they were feeling it, but it was not coming across. And in order to build that relationship, it was important for us to bring them together. So we started organizing these sharing circles, and we called these the vagina dialogues. And that is where we invited, say, for example, I invited some of my friends, and then my friends invited some of their friends. So that is how, like from an immediate network, it started happening, where women started meeting, and then we also met friends of our friends. And that is how we started talking and sharing. And this sharing circles were, it was, we tried to make it, comfortable and also fun, so that women do not feel that, anyway, there was so much trauma, and we did not want to, end up feeling demotivated. So we had quiz, we also, had story sharing, where we talked about our moments, we talked about, our experiences. And then finally, at the end of the circles, we felt very powerful collectively. And what we did was that we told them that there is no pressure, because it's, so there is one thing where you are going through something, and then to be able to take up leadership the next moment to challenge it is also a journey in itself. So we had these circles, more than once. And also we had one-on-one conversations with women who were more interested in these circles, and then we invited them for leadership. Like we asked them that, do you want to do something about it together? And then they were like, yes, we want to change the situation, we want to, actually hold these service providers accountable and bring more and more women together who might be needing our support. Like maybe there are women who don't even, I mean, they are not even, who don't even identify that this is a challenge in itself. So it's very important. So, and then these women, through one on one conversations, we onboarded them, and then they became our leaders, and they were the spearheaders of the campaign. So in 2018, there were, more than 20 25 women initially who took up the leadership of this campaign. So
You
yeah.
talked about the stories. I want to get a sense of how critical the practice of public narrative was in these early parts of the campaign, and in building giving women the courage to share their own stories, but also the stories of us that unites through those shared experiences, but also then the particular stories of now. And what was the ask that you're making on members of that constituency?
Yeah. Uh, I have to say that public narrative and relationship building, like these two were basically the main pillars of the campaign. and public narrative was the main pillar. I mean, mostly story of self. So because like I said, there was just one story that sparked the campaign, that started the campaign. Now we also, like used our own stories to inspire other women to open up, because it was very difficult for them to talk about it. So when these circles happened, and also when we had these one-on-one conversations, we shared our story of self, and we saw this instant connection. Like they started sharing, oh, like something happened like that with me as well. I didn't realize it back then, but then now that you are sharing about this moment, I can completely connect. And then we also had this conversation around emotions, like, okay, how are you feeling right now? And there was so much anger, like so much outrage, and we were like, no, we have to do something about it. So I think the transition from self to us was feeling this anger together, and also wanting to navigate it through to something, like meaningful. Like, what do we do with this anger? We have to do something about it. And then I think it also really led us to the story of now, where the main ask was to the urgency of the situation was very clear, because it was happening, and it has happened to 80 to 90% of women that we had a conversation with, right? So it was a very urgent situation that happened, that was going on. And then we knew that, okay, now we have to do something about it. And the ask was to, like to be together, to keep these stories coming, to keep on building legitimacy, so that we can create a very strong narrative to be able to present it to the service providers. So yeah, that is how it shaped up.
So, if we can talk about, I guess what we would call as a power analysis, give us an overview of the actors that were in this campaign. We've spoken a bit about the constituency, and you've gone into some details about the leadership as well. But talk to us about when you were doing a mapping of the situation and the landscape that you're operating in. Who were some of the other actors, supporters, opposition, competitors, and what were the resources that you were identifying that you could use when starting to develop and build the power of the constituency for the change that you were seeking?
Yeah, yeah. uh, when we started the campaign, it was just the women, and we were like, oh god, it's just us, and we have to, like conquer and do everything by ourselves. But then it was interesting, because like in the course of time, there was some like-minded doctors who joined us, like, because it went, uh the campaign actually went viral, like the stories and everything, we started sharing it on platforms, of course with consent, anonymously. And then I remember, like, there were doctors who reached out to us, and we also reached out to some of them. And I remember there was this particular doctor who said that, I used to believe that sexual health and reproductive health of unmarried women is not important, because right now they shouldn't do anything, they should be, like good girls. But then now I realize that I have also been judgmental, and they have faced so much, and I really want to change my perspective about it. I really want to join your campaign. And it was such a massive win for us. And we're like, okay, great, that is amazing. And so, like, so that doctor joined us. And then they also started bringing in other like minded doctors with them. So, a very important actor for us was, of course, like these like minded doctors whose thoughts and perspectives either we could change through our stories, or, like the relationship that they were garnering among themselves. I mean, the doctors. And also, like, for example, this medical students body in India, like these young doctors, right, like the residents, like who were just joining, and who were not happy the way it was functioning, so they also wanted to bring change. So these young medical students also started joining us in the campaign. They were very important actors. The other thing was media. Like there was some now social media, of course, like it was really really important for us to spread the word, and also to, like get in touch with women with whom otherwise we wouldn't have been able to get in touch with. But apart from that, there were some journalists who were unmarried women themselves, and they have also, like faced it, and they were ready to cover our stories and put it on mainstream media, and they did that. So I think that was really 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 amazing for us, and it gained attention. In terms of opponents, again, there were doctors, and also, like doctors who were decision makers, like holding this authority, like to make decisions, and not taking names, but in these organizations where, like they play very important role in creating ethical guidelines, for example, like also this code of conducts for doctors and all of that. So they were opponents for us as well, like this very big hospital body also. I remember, like, we wanted to get them on board because if they would say something, it would mean a lot for the campaign, like if we could get them on board. But they were strictly, we went to the hospital, we tried getting, like appointments, and then we tried calling them and building relationship with them, also building pressure around them. They were like, no, we do not want to talk about it. And the funny part is, uh, I remember the head of the gynecologist section, they wanted to talk to us. But the hospital authority made it very clear that no, you're not going to talk about it. And you cannot give your personal opinion because you are a member of the hospital. So we were like, okay, fine. So, like opponents in these regards were very, very, very strong. And mostly, yeah, medical service providers. And that's it. But, and also very interestingly, not opponents, but there were some women who told us that uh, no, and let me tell you, they were, like quite privileged. And they told us that, but I don't deal with this issue. I am very open about my sexual health. I go and, like, to my doctor is also very good with me. So I don't think I want to be part of the campaign. So it was not like there were openness, but there was also this another narrative that we had to challenge and, like work together. So I think, yeah, these are some of the actors who played really important.
So we can gain an understanding of I guess the power analysis to develop your theory of change. The change that your people wanted was like, it's to me it sounds like at the start that your theory of change was a power with scenario, and then move to a power over. Just talk us through the stepping stones of how you came to that. Am I right on that?
Yeah. No, yeah, actually, you are almost right. So basically, initially, our theory of change was, like power over. Because what we wanted to do was that, like, we had to create a very strong narrative so that we can hold the service providers accountable and we can, like, demand them to change it. And we did a lot of on ground actions as well. Like, we ran petitions, and then, like, we went on the streets, we collected more stories, we covered it on media and everything. So a lot of pressure building tactics were also happening. But then we realized that a very interesting strategy would actually be to share our stories in a way where they understand, and we also, like, try to connect with them on the values of empathy, care, and because they also need our resources. Like, we form a very important pool of their patients, right? And we need them, and also we need their resources, like we needed their decision making power and ability to bring that change. And then finally we changed our strategy to a more power with strategy, where we thought that no, it's important to build relationship with the institution. So like the Delhi Medical Council and the Delhi Medical Association. So the medical council was basically, like where all doctors in Delhi were registered under the medical council, and they had a very important role to play. So, and if they, like shared a guideline with the doctors, they are bound to listen to the guidelines. And also, like, they also had the power of giving and taking away license of doctors. So, what we did, so we realized that, oh my God, this body is very important for the campaign. And instead of, like going on building pressure, and that was also creating this barrier that, oh, okay, no, you don't, you are, like treating us as a villain. So we don't want to be part of the campaign. And then what we did was that we smartly and strategically tried to build relationship with doctors who had relationship with the Delhi Medical Council and the Delhi Medical Association, so that the relationship, like develops in a way where we can actually get to talk to them, present our stories, and finally, like convince them that no, this is what is happening and you have to do something about that. So yeah, like it started with a pressure building approach, and then it became more in terms of relation and power, relationship building, and power build.
So if we think of, I mean, when we talk about a theory of change, and you touched on some really important points there about the interests in one another's resources. How did you work out what interest your opponents or those that had power, what interest did they have in your resources? just step us through that so people can understand how one works out a theory of change.
Yeah. Uh, it was it was quite like it was amusing for us because they did actually have like a lot of interest in our resources, because when we were sharing these stories, it also meant that like the community of gynecologists or the community of doctors, they are also facing a backlash from masses, right? So their reputation was very important for them. So that they had this interest, like, and we were very important to keep that up. So it was very important for them to like also build that relationship with us, because they were interested in our resource, in our ability to keep their reputation fine. And then also, like, because a thing that is very common in I don't know about, I'm not sure about abroad and outside, but in India, like, most of the times, like, people go to gynecologists or psychiatrists through recommendations. Like, I would want to go to a doctor where, say, for example, if my friend has gone and they had a really good experience, I would not want to go to a doctor who I don't know at all, because of the fear of judgment and scare. So, like, these recommendations and everything also played a very important role and a very important resource for doctors. So, like, they also could, like, have more and more customers and patients for themselves. So, like, these things were important for them. And the resources that they had were actually a lot. Like, they had this decision making power and ability. So, and also to, like, so we developed a code of conduct where it was basically like a, this 10 commandments, and we wanted the doctors to accept it. Like, for example, one of the commandments were, don't ask me if I'm married, like, just, like, treat me. So we wanted the doctors to accept it, and it could only be accepted by an authority, right? Like, if an authoritative body says that no, these are important, then the other doctors will follow it. Otherwise, it will not make any sense if just one individual doctor follows it, right? So the resource that we were interested in was, of course, like, as many doctors, I mean, as possible, should accept that code of conduct, should help us to, like, reach to the larger bodies, their network, and, like, the relationships, their decision making power, and the authority that they have. So, yeah, that is how it played well for us.
So you've got this theory of change. But as we all know, it's only a theory of change. It's how we theorize that we think we can make change in the future. The way to test it, obviously, is the tactics and the timing. So talk us through where you began. What were the initial tactics that you deployed to test your theory of change?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, like a lot of tactics, but I'm just talking about some major ones and some really interesting ones. So, the one of the tactics that we used initially was, like, creating a very exciting report, and we did that through story collection and data collection. So we collected, like, stories in terms of sharing circles in 5 different states, because we wanted to focus that. See, it's not just happening in Delhi, because Delhi is a tier 1 city, but we also wanted to, like, show that no, this is a problem that happens across, like, cities, locations, backgrounds, identities. Of course, it's different according to privilege and agency, but it is happening. So we did that, and with the help of this, like, so we collected this data from more than 750 women in Delhi, and, like, this and more than 50 women participated in this sharing circles that happened in different states. So, collecting all those stories and data, we created this report, and we had a launch event with that report. And that is where we called, like, doctors. That is where we invited more unmarried women and community members who could relate and, like, be part of the campaign. We invited the media people, and, like, some allies as well. So, like, different partner organizations, because we wanted to have a very strong, like, network, so that it's not like only Haiyya working in isolation with unmarried women, but then many other organizations working together with the community of unmarried women. So, I think that was a very exciting tactic for us, and it helped, because after that, after the report launch, women actually started registering for the campaign. They joined the campaign, and, like, these doctors, they also actually came to know about health over stigma from this report launch, and they said that, okay, no, I really want to join the campaign because something is terribly wrong and we have to do something about it. So it was a network building, like a report launch, and to get more and more people with us. So I think this was one of the tactics that we did. The other action that we did was, like the ballot box action. So we, like a group of unmarried women, so we spread out in different parts of Delhi, and we were just on the streets standing with a box, and where we were like, and with, like placards and posters with, like health over stigma and imageries and everything. And we randomly, like started asking women on the street, I mean, after seeking consent from them, like, did you even hear of something like that? Like, have you ever faced something like this, or do you know anyone who have faced something like that? And you won't believe, we spoke to 100 women. So this happened 3 times. So the first time we spoke to 100 women, and 90 of them said yes. And we were like, oh my god, this is real. And they were not even part of the campaign back then, right? Like, we were just trying to, like get women to speak up and to understand this. And it was covered by this media channel, and then like a short film kind of a thing. I don't know how to put it, but then like a short story kind of a thing, and then we put it out there. So that was like a very interesting tactic that happened, because it made people, like understand, join, and the issue became very, very, like public. And I'm just going to talk about another tactic, and then I'll let you move on to the next question, because so many of them. So the other tactic that we did was, like this online campaign, and we called it the My Gynac story. So with the stories that we collected, we shared just, and it was in collaboration with a digital platform, digital feminist organization, and we posted 10 stories at first. And then, so the first phase, it went on for 6 months. So the first 3 months were just, like trying to get more stories and understand, like to see if it's happening organically. And then from 10 stories, it moved to more than 50, more than 100. And then the next phase of the online campaign was to, like tagging the medical authorities and telling them to, like start paying attention to these and to do something about it. So that is where, like we also got attention of the medical council, the association, and everyone. So, and that finally led to this conference, this gathering that happened the day that we actually, the final tactic, where the Delhi Medical Council president, the Medical Association president, unmarried women, partners, doctors, we were sitting in this room, and then the presidents, they stand up and they say that yes, this is a problem, this is a very big challenge, and as medical service providers and as decision makers, it's important for us to, like treat this as a priority, and we are going to ensure that all women are treated equally without judgment. So I think that was the final tactic that we did in the campaign, and yeah, it was a winning day for us.
So, with all of that wonderful work, I mean, this went across 2000 and the year 2018. It sounded like as the campaign grew in its capacity, how did you manage to organize more and more people? Because you had your leadership team, but did you get a chance to snowflake that out, create a secondary
Yeah.
tier of leadership or a third tier of leadership? How did you, the structure of the campaign? Talk to us about how you structured the campaign so it enabled to grow its
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah. So yes, we had the leadership team, and then we had the first layer of, like, so we did snowflake it to the first layer. So we were joined by like a number of, like college students who were taking leadership in their own colleges, and also onboarding more and more students from their colleges. And then also we had people who were region specific, right? Like, for example, in the northeast region of Delhi, or the south zone or east zone, like there were women who were representing, and they were also onboarding more and more women. So the first layer leadership team was very strong, and we were doing like a lot of capacity building workshops with them, trainings with them, and where they were taking leadership, like strategy meetings. So we were doing it together. But then the challenge that we faced was having the second layer leadership team. Like it was like women would join us, but then the commitment level was very different. Like they were like, okay, I want to join for, like this action and that action, and also for say one strategy meeting. But to be able to have a very strong second layer of leadership team, it was very challenging for us. We did lose a lot of women, I mean, a lot of commitment from women when we are trying to build a second layer. So it did structure to the first layer where it was very strong, but then it was challenging for the second layer to develop.
What did you find that was so challenging? I was going to ask you later on, if you had your chance again, what would you do differently? But maybe here's an example of how you would handle
Yeah,
this a second time around.
yeah. Uh, like there were many learnings for us in the campaign and challenges. Like in terms of the team, I think we were focusing a lot on the theoretical understanding of snowflake instead of like trying to give it a more practical shape on ground. I think that is something we were like, okay, so this is how a snowflake looks, right? Like this is the core team, this is the first layer, this is how the second layer is going to be like, and like this is how the accountability system is going to be like, everything. But we failed to realize that there are so many other factors and other sociocultural baggage that women face, and it might not be like very practical and realistic to keep on like relying on women to bring more and more women and to keep on building leadership, because leadership development by yourself of yourself and then leadership development of other women, it is a very long and a tedious process as well, because this is the only time where as a community of unmarried women and also from diverse backgrounds and identities, you are learning to be courageous and take your own agency and do something for yourself. And that is like a very big deal in itself, where you have taken the leadership to bring change. And then like this additional commitment of like, okay, no, you have to build that second layer, you need to get more and more women. I think that is where we lost a lot of women, because it was like too many asks, I feel. And if I have a chance of like leading the campaign again with my community, I think that would be the first thing, to have a more realistic understanding of developing my team structure, and
Hmm.
and have very strategic asks and very like narrowed down uh, I don't know, like narrow down strategies of going on motivating my women instead of, like, because we are not machines. Like, we need to stop, we need to rest, we need to celebrate more. I think our work, and we were so active, maybe relaxation was a bit less. I think that is something that I would definitely want to change next time. And I think that also opens up more possibilities and opportunities for the teams to, like develop organically.
I mean, that was my follow-up question you mentioned there about taking the time to stop and celebrate. Tell me about the things that you did do that maintained the commitment and the motivation of the people that were participating in the campaign. What was where were the heart moments? I mean, obviously, narrative is such a critical
Yeah.
expression of heart and love and solidarity. But what other ways in which did you introduce things into the campaign that enabled you guys to stop, celebrate, and actually look at what you've achieved thus far before you then go again?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that we did was, like we at times we met not to strategize, not to, like talk about anything very heavy or serious, but just to, like celebrate. So we would order food, we would just, like play games, and we would also feel a bit lighter together, because it was a very emotionally draining, like issue for us. And then we would just, like take time to, and we did this in our Delhi office. So we would invite, like our partner organizations, the women who were part of the campaigns, and then they would come and we would just like play some games, like it was just for celebration. And then we would also like for example, uh, we would order a lot of pizza and ice cream, and we would just like eat together, have fun together. There is one more thing that we did, like after all our actions, we made sure that we went somewhere to celebrate. Like it was not like, okay, the action is over. Like for example, I was talking about the ballot box action, right? So it happened in this really popular area called Connaught Place in Delhi. So there were like markets and everything. And then after the event happened, we made sure that we are taking pictures together just to, like feel that energy. And after that, we were like, okay, now keep everything in your bag. It's time to celebrate. Let's just go upstairs, because there were like a lot of cafes, everything around. We would just go there, sit, chill, talk, and just, like share jokes and, okay, how do we feel right now? And nothing about re strategizing and doing anything next time. But yes, we also took commitment for the next meeting. So it was like, okay, so now we are celebrating, but then we need to have another meeting next week. So let's just give a commitment. for the next meeting. So yeah, these are some of the things that we.
Spoken like a true organizer, always with an ask at the end. No one's walking out that door; they're coming back in again. I love it. Let's talk about outcomes. What were some of the outcomes from the campaign, and how does it measure up against the goals that you had set for yourselves at the start?
Yeah. So a very big outcome for the campaign that we always wanted to have was, like to start a national conversation around unmarried women's sexual and reproductive health, rights, and justice, and also to, like start demanding change around it. So it was actually Health Over Stigma which started this conversation, and a lot of different organizations, like started talking about it, running their mini programs, campaigns, workshops, and a lot of women started, like sharing their stories, and it became a national conversation. So that was very important for us. The most important outcome, like this was a very important outcome, and the next outcome was the Delhi Medical Council and the Delhi Medical Association accepting a code of conduct, like saying it publicly that no, we know that this is like a very challenging thing and we need to do something about it. I think that was very important for us. And apart from that, like a lot of doctors bodies and doctors, they accepted our code of conduct and they pledged to it, and they said that yes, no, we are going to, like follow these commandments, and we are going to like change our perspectives. So I think these are the three really important outcomes. Apart from that, let me tell you, the leadership development of women, like that was like a very, because that is something that we wanted out of it. Like the leadership is developed of our people. It's not like okay, the change has happened and now nothing else, we can, like go on with our own lives and nothing else is happening. It was very important. Let me give you a very small example of it. So like during the we continued the campaign during the pandemic just to, like provide support. So what we did was, there was this woman who reached out to us, because again, trigger warning. So she reached out to us and she said that she was going through an unwanted pregnancy and she wanted to seek an abortion, and because of the pandemic it was very difficult, like for her to also, of course, can't talk about it with their parents, and also to also go to a doctor. So now we had these doctors onboarded as part of the campaign, and we connected the doctor with her. And then finally, like after a lot of challenge, she could, like seek service from the doctor, and finally could go for an abortion in the pandemic, like during the pandemic, and it was a hush hush thing. Now, what happened was that this woman, she joined the campaign and she became this really important one of the very important leaders of the campaign, and she started leading things. And there was this access day that we did, like another action, and she was one of the very important members who actually led and organized it. So we made sure that the space was, like for you to first come to seek support and to find a solidarity network, and then also how are you escalating your own leadership in terms of developing more and more leadership of other women and helping and supporting people. So I think this was like a very important outcome for us. So yeah.
Sreejani, I love that last story. I mean, it speaks to the strength of community organizing, that it's not transactional, that it is transformational. That a woman who is going through this
Yeah.
absolutely tragic, tormenting situation in her own personal life, to then be transformed into taking on a leadership role within this campaign and creating change is just, it just underlines the work that you guys have done in this campaign and the importance of community organizing. So you should be so proud about that. Let's stick
Thank
with our
you so much.
community organizing norms and do a debrief about pluses, challenges, and key takeaways. What are some of the other pluses that you want to lift up from the work of this campaign over that year?
I think most definitely using of public narrative and relationship building, like having continuous one-on-ones with women, and like not just women, with stakeholders and everyone, that built like a lot of power in the campaign and got really important people for us. And I think in all campaigns it's very important to, like relationship building and public narrative, they are the most definite pluses in most campaigns, I feel, and they were like very strong pillars. So this has to continue. This has to continue. The other pluses was, like where, like basically taking this people power approach, right? Like it was not us or people at Haiyya making that decision. Okay, this should happen now. This should happen next. It was basically the women, like who were. I remember we would sit in this room and there were some 30, 40 women, and there was this board, and we would take these decisions together. So okay, so there was a time when we took this decision that okay, no, we cannot keep on building pressure, and we have to start building relationships with doctors. And that decision came from women. We were sitting in that room. So like transferring ownership and also like being accountable to each other through this ownership, I think that is very important, and that was a very big plus because we enabled that to happen. It was not like decision making was concentrated only on like only on me and only on like 2 3 people from Haiyya who were leading the campaign. But uh, the challenge that I would say, I mean, a delta for us was, like I already talked about it, the leadership structure. I mean, because did not, did not look at the different aspects of it, did not look at the realistic way of, like translating Snowflake into, like on ground, on ground realities of women, but then trying to just, like fit into this. No, no, no. This is how the Snowflake works. This is how it has to happen. So I think that was a delta for us, and I would definitely want to, like change that. Most of that. And also, like another delta was that because maybe I remember at times I was being very strict, like with the framework, and I was like, no, I cannot go beyond this. I cannot go beyond this. So this would happen like that. But it's very important to, like be flexible with the lived realities with people, because that is what is going to determine your pedagogy for you. And that is where you can make tweaks, shifts, and changes to reach it. I think these are some of the challenges and deltas that would stay with.
And some of the biggest key takeaways for you and for the campaign.
The the most important takeaway for me was the relationship that I built and developed with these women. Like I've met so many women, and I'm saying women, but then there were people and individuals who did not identify as cis women, but then they were part of the campaigns as well. Like there were people who were gender non-conforming, and there were people who chose different, like styles of living, different patterns of living. So I would just say people. So these people who I, like build relationship with, and I still have relationship with them now, and the leadership escalation for them have been, like major and massive for us, because now some of these community leaders, they take up the role of coaches in our programs, and there are women who have started their own collectives and organizations fighting for, like sexual and reproductive health justice and care in their own cities, and in their own areas and locations. So I think that has to be my biggest takeaway.
Sreejani, that's absolutely fantastic. And I do, on behalf of Social Democratic and LCN, we really appreciate you coming on today's podcast and sharing your experiences and your stories and your strategies in what has been a fantastic campaign. I've found the last hour enthralling, and I know there's so much more we could talk about, but obviously we have only got an hour. But if there's anyone listening who is in India or maybe even around the world that wants to give some form of support, if you don't live in India, maybe you want to give some financial support, or if you do live in India, you want to get involved. How do you want to give a shout out to the Haiyya organization? How do you get involved with the work that you guys are doing?
So right now, after our campaign on Health Over Stigma, right now we are moving towards, like creating a strong network and solidarity. A cohort of organizations, collectives, groups, or individuals who are working on sexual and reproductive health care and justice. And we will start the program by the end of this year or next year. And we are, like inviting organizations who are working on sexual health and to, like be part of it, to learn organizing with us, and to, like make their campaign more strategized and, like more of course, like to be more rooted in the framework of organizing, because it has worked for us, so that, like we create larger change in the movement. So if anyone wants to get associated with us, definitely, like you can write to us, or you can DM us on our Instagram. It's called Haiyya. So, and we also have a page, Health Over Stigma, so you can also, like DM us, and you can get associated with us in any capacity that you would want, and definitely be part of this program. The program is called Hak Over Stigma, and Hak means rights. So Hak is a Hindi word, and it means rights. So, like your right is over stigma. So yes, you can get associated with us through this program.
Fantastic. We'll probably put all those links in the description of today's
Yep.
podcast as well for folks if they want to click on that. Sreejani, once again, thank you so much for your time on today's episode. It's been wonderful to see you again, but it's also been wonderful to hear about all the great work that you did and all the wonderful organising and leadership development that you did over the course of the 2018 Health Over Stigma campaign. And we're so grateful for your time today.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, like I feel so good talking about the campaign. And I just feel this energy and, like this rush of energies that, oh my God, wow, I have been able to talk about this campaign after like 1-2 years. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks for listening. If you're interested in learning more about the organizing practices, please be sure to check out Leading Change Network website at leadingchangenetwork.org. We also invite you to join our community as organizations or individuals. Individual membership is $100 a year, and you can access all of our learning opportunities and resources and be part of our vibrant global community.